Millionaire made the waitress answer questions to mock her, but her talent made her.
Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
The grand soirée at Veronica Delacourte's mansion unfolded under the dazzling glow of hundreds of crystal chandeliers, their reflections dancing across walls adorned with classic oil paintings. Everywhere, elegantly dressed guests clinked champagne glasses and engaged in lively conversation, their laughter echoing through the aristocratic ambience. At the center of it all stood Veronica Delacourte, the host of the evening, exuding an air of authority and pride. Her meticulously styled platinum hair and form-fitting, fiery red evening gown accentuated her image as a powerful and uncompromising woman. Clara, a young woman, weaved through the crowd with a tray of drinks in hand. She wore a simple uniform for the staff, yet her determined gaze and gentle smile set her apart, even in the face of the condescending stares from the upper class. At 21 years old, Clara was a brilliant student working part-time to fund her education and support her family. Her bright brown eyes sparkled with curiosity whenever she spotted an opportunity to learn something new, though in this space, the stark divisions of class were unmistakable. "Mary, could you help me grab more drinks for that table?" Clara softly asked her co-worker, Mary, a kind-hearted middle-aged woman who always looked out for her. "Clara, you're more capable than you realize," Mary encouraged her. "Don't let these people make you lose your confidence." Clara nodded slightly and returned to her tasks. Meanwhile, a man in his 40s, with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes, observed Clara from a distance. He was Alexander Gutierrez, a renowned tech entrepreneur. Intrigued by the young woman's determination, he decided to strike up a conversation as she approached. "Young lady, I'm curious about your story. Why did you choose to take on this job at an event like this?" Alexander asked, his tone calm but his eyes alight with interest. Clara, slightly taken aback, responded politely, "Sir, I'm trying to earn money to finish my studies. I believe this is the best way to both learn and support myself." "What are you studying?" Alexander continued, his curiosity undiminished. "I'm studying applied mathematics and economics, sir," Clara replied with a hint of pride. "I love numbers and how they work in the real world." Their conversation began to draw the attention of those nearby. Veronica, watching from afar, felt a surge of irritation. A mere waitress daring to capture the attention of a businessman like Alexander was an affront to her. To Veronica, everything at this party should revolve around her, and Clara's presence felt like a challenge. "Clara, who is this little waitress that's caught your attention?" Veronica interjected as she approached, cutting the conversation short. Her voice was cold, but her eyes glinted with calculation. Alexander smiled politely and replied, "Veronica, she's a young woman with remarkable determination. You know, I'm always interested in people with potential." Veronica scoffed, her gaze sweeping over Clara with disdain. "Potential? Alexander, you seem far too lenient. Don't let a waitress make you forget the sophistication required in our society." Clara stood still, striving to remain composed, though she couldn't help but feel angered by the blatant insult. She didn't respond, simply lowering her head quietly. Alexander shook his head slightly, about to say something, but Veronica had already shifted the topic, waving over other guests. In moments, she had drawn a crowd around her, creating an oppressive atmosphere. "Clara, have you ever answered riddles?" "I've heard that math students are usually quite good at them," Veronica asked, her tone dripping with mockery. Clara hesitated slightly but maintained her composure. "Madam, I've participated in some puzzles at school, but only for fun." "Really?" Veronica laughed aloud. "Then let's see how skilled you are, shall we? A little challenge never hurt anyone, right?" The surrounding guests chuckled, some whispering amongst themselves. Clara could feel the tension in the air but refused to appear weak in the face of Veronica's scorn. "If that's what you wish, madam, I'll participate," Clara replied, her voice calm. Mary approached Clara nervously and whispered, "Clara, you don't have to do this." Don't let them use you. Clara gently held Mary's hand and said softly, Mary, I'll be fine. I can't let them keep looking down on me. Veronica clapped her hands to grab everyone's attention. All right, Clara, the first question. A train 120 meters long crosses a bridge 80 meters long at a speed of 60 kilometers per hour. How long does it take for the train to completely cross the bridge? Clara paused for a moment, calculating silently. Madam, the time is 12 seconds. The room fell silent for a moment, followed by murmurs. Some people were impressed, while others merely scoffed. Veronica raised an eyebrow, clearly displeased with Clara's quick wit. Not bad, Veronica said. But this is only the beginning. Alexander smiled and stepped back, observing the situation unfold. Meanwhile, Clara stood tall, prepared for the next question, despite the curious, disdainful, or admiring gazes surrounding her. The tension in the room thickened as Veronica prepared her next question. Her sharp, calculating eyes fixated on Clara like a predator eyeing its prey. The guests, initially treating this as light entertainment, were now fully engrossed in the standoff between a powerful socialite and a young waitress. The next question, Veronica said coldly. If you're as good at math as you claim, tell me this: someone deposits €10,000 in a savings account with an annual compound interest rate of 5%. After 3 years, what will the total amount in the account be? Clara took a deep breath, striving to stay calm. She knew this was a more advanced question but not impossible to solve. After a few seconds of mental calculation, she answered steadily, Madam, after 3 years, the total amount will be €11,576.25. The room grew so silent that even the faint clink of glasses on trays could be heard. Some guests, particularly those in business, nodded subtly, acknowledging that Clara's answer was accurate. Alexander, watching from nearby, smiled with satisfaction, his eyes reflecting admiration. Veronica, however, showed no sign of being impressed. On the contrary, her faint smile only sharpened her gaze. She turned her attention to the crowd, stirring their curiosity further. How interesting. But intelligence isn't everything, is it? Veronica said, her tone laced with sarcasm. A young waitress like you, no matter how smart, could hardly excel in matters of life experience and practical knowledge. Let's try a different field, shall we? Literature, perhaps. Veronica turned to an older gentleman with silver hair and a composed demeanor. Carlos, would you help me with a question about literature? I think it's time to change the mood. Carlos, a renowned literature professor, stepped forward with a gentle smile. He turned to Clara, his gaze friendly but also serious. My question is this: in Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote, the main character has a dream and decides to become a knight. Can you tell me what that dream signifies in the context of 17th century society? Clara paused. She hadn't expected to be asked such an academic question, especially from an expert in the field. Some guests began whispering, a few laughing mockingly, thinking that she wouldn't be able to answer this question. She definitely doesn't know, a woman whispered to the person next to her, her voice dripping with contempt. But Clara didn't let their words shake her. She took a deep breath, recalling what she had learned from her comparative literature class at university. After a few seconds, she began her answer, calm but persuasive. Sir, Don Quixote's dream symbolizes the human longing for noble ideals in a society that was becoming increasingly pragmatic. He seeks honor, justice, and human values, but at the same time, the author uses that dream to satirize the blindness and unrealistic pursuit of these ideals. The room fell into silence. Carlos nodded, his smile widening. Very good, young lady. A complete and accurate answer. A few guests started to clap, reluctantly, though they couldn't hide their surprise. Alexander looked at Clara with obvious admiration, while Veronica began to feel her control slipping. Very good, but I'm sure it's just luck, Veronica said, her voice a little sharper. Let's move on to another question. Mary stood at the corner of the room, her hands clenched tightly, clearly worried for Clara. She didn't dare approach, afraid of interrupting, but her gaze never left her young friend, standing in the eye of the storm. Clara, you have to be careful, Mary whispered to herself. Veronica won't let go so easily. Veronica glanced at Alexander, as if to provoke him. Alexander, what do you think of this performance? Or do you want to join in and ask a question? Alexander smiled, his tone calm. Veronica, I think she's done very well. But if you want, I could ask a question related to economics. That's my field, and I'm sure I'll keep it fair. No need, Veronica quickly replied, clearly not wanting Alexander to intervene. This is my party, and I want to assess her abilities myself. She turned back to Clara, her eyes full of calculation. Clara, do you know anything about art history? Tell me about the connection between Impressionism and the development of photography. Clara realized this wasn't just a knowledge question but a maneuver to overpower her. But she wouldn't let herself be beaten. After a few seconds of thought, she answered with confidence. Madam, the Impressionist movement developed in the late 19th century, partly due to the emergence of photography. Impressionist artists, like Monet and Renoir, were influenced by photography's ability to capture real-life moments. This encouraged them to explore light and color more naturally, rather than focusing solely on perfect details. Once again, Clara's answer stunned the crowd. Alexander lightly applauded, while Veronica tried to mask her discomfort. Not bad, Veronica said, her voice now lacking its usual fluidity. But I think we need a little more of a challenge. Her gaze flashed with danger, preparing for another tactic to corner Clara. The room seemed to hold its breath as Veronica turned to the crowd, wearing a cold smile. This time, she didn't ask a question immediately but deliberately created an uncomfortable silence. Some guests whispered to one another, while everyone's gaze was fixed on Clara, standing tall, undeterred. Clara, Veronica said, her voice elongated as if considering her next move. You've surprised me with your knowledge, but I wonder if that intelligence can be applied in real-life situations. Let's try a more practical question. She turned to another guest, a young man with a sharp face. Louis, you're an expert in applied science. Could you help me with a question? Luis Alvarez, a renowned researcher, stepped forward confidently. He nodded at Veronica and then turned to Clara, his gaze inquisitive but not unkind. All right, Veronica. But I'll make sure this question is fair. Clara looked at Louis, silently thanking him for his professionalism. However, she still felt the weight of the pressure on her, as every question seemed like a public test before this powerful crowd. Louis began, if we have a sphere with a mass of 5 kilograms, falling freely from a height of 20 meters in a frictionless environment, can you calculate the time it will take to hit the ground? Clara immediately recalled the physics formulas she had learned in school. Though she wasn't a physics major, she knew this question was within her reach. She took a deep breath, her mind quickly running through the calculation steps. Sir, Clara answered slowly but firmly. The time it takes for the sphere to hit the ground can be calculated with the formula, T equals square root, 2h/g. With h being 20 meters and g being the acceleration due to gravity, approximately 9.8 meters per square second, the time will be about 2.02 seconds. Louis raised an eyebrow, then nodded. Correct. You're very good, Clara. Some guests, including Alexander, chuckled in satisfaction, while others began whispering. Clearly, Clara had overcome yet another challenging test. But Veronica, rather than showing disappointment, smiled with a knowing look. You really are talented, Clara, Veronica said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. But I wonder, does that talent give you the right to enter a world you don't belong to? Her words felt like a direct blow to Clara's self-esteem. Clara didn't answer immediately, but her eyes sparked with determination. Veronica's disdain only made her stronger. Veronica, maybe you should let her take a break, Alexander said, stepping forward with a calm but firm tone. She's done very well so far. I'm afraid the party would be less interesting if we stopped here, Veronica retorted sharply. She turned to Clara, her arrogance now evident. Clara, are you still ready? Or are you feeling tired? Clara smiled gently, trying to maintain her composure. Madam, I'm fine. If you still have more questions, I'm ready to answer. Clara's words earned the admiration of several guests. Alexander, standing nearby, watched her with a mixture of concern and unmistakable admiration for the young woman's resilience. Meanwhile, Mary, from a distance, could only silently pray for Clara. Veronica continued, this time with a question about history. Clara, can you tell me what the main driving forces were behind the rapid development of European nations during the Second Industrial Revolution? Once again, Clara searched her memory. It wasn't an easy question, but she knew it fell within her area of study. After a few seconds of thought, she answered. Madam, the main drivers of the Second Industrial Revolution were the development of the steel industry, electricity, and modern transportation systems like railroads. These factors increased productivity and expanded markets for European nations. Veronica bit her lip slightly, clearly displeased that Clara had answered correctly again. A few polite claps came from the crowd, further fueling her frustration. You're quite knowledgeable, Clara, Veronica said, drawing out her words as though trying to mask her irritation. But intelligence alone isn't enough to earn respect. Status and lineage are what determine your place in society. The comment caused the room to fall into silence. Some guests exchanged glances, a few visibly uncomfortable with Veronica's blunt attitude. Alexander frowned, his disapproval evident. Madam, Clara responded calmly, I believe that intelligence and character are what truly define a person's worth, not their background or social standing. Clara's response drew a few approving chuckles from the crowd, but it also made Veronica's face flush with anger. She realized that if this confrontation continued, her reputation might suffer. Yet instead of stopping, she decided to raise the difficulty of her questions. Very well, Clara, Veronica said, her cold smile returning. Let's see how long you can maintain your confidence. Veronica gestured for a staff member to bring a small whiteboard and a marker. It was clear she was setting up a completely new challenge, one that promised to be more difficult than anything Clara had faced so far. The small whiteboard was placed in the middle of the room, right in front of Clara. Veronica walked over slowly, her perfectly manicured hand picking up the marker. She began sketching a complex diagram with straight lines, curves, and a few cryptic mathematical symbols. Some of the guests started murmuring, wondering what Veronica was planning next. Clara, Veronica said, her tone dripping with challenge. I believe you are quite intelligent, but can you solve this real-world problem? This is an optimization problem, a topic I hear is quite common in economics. Solve it for us here and now. Clara focused intently on the board, analyzing every detail Veronica had written. The diagram appeared to model an economic problem involving supply and demand equilibrium, but the incomplete information made the problem significantly more complicated. She realized this wasn't just a knowledge test, it was a trap deliberately set to confuse and embarrass her in front of the crowd. Madam, I'll need a moment to review the problem, Clara said, her voice steady despite the high stakes. Take your time, Veronica replied with a smirk, stepping back to give Clara room to approach the board. We have all evening. Mary, watching from afar, clenched her fists in worry. She wanted to approach Clara but knew it would only add to the pressure. Alexander, meanwhile, stood with arms crossed, his sharp eyes watching both Veronica and Clara, as if trying to predict the next move. Clara picked up the marker and began writing down her analysis. Her voice was clear as she explained each step, trying to articulate her thoughts so the audience could follow. This diagram models the equilibrium point of supply and demand, Clara began, her tone calm. To find the equilibrium, I need to establish equations from this data and then solve them to determine the optimal value. A few guests began nodding, realizing that Clara was on the right track. However, Veronica wasn't about to let her succeed easily. She stepped closer, pretending to inspect Clara's work, and then spoke with mock concern. "You're doing well, but I think you've overlooked a key factor. Are you sure your equation is correct?" Clara paused, reviewing her calculations step by step. She quickly realized that Veronica had deliberately included incorrect data in the problem, which had skewed the initial equation. Nonetheless, Clara remained composed. She adjusted her approach, identified the error, and continued solving the problem. "Madam, it seems the initial data doesn't align, but by correcting this value, we can find the accurate solution," Clara said, her voice calm yet resolute. Her response drew a few chuckles and applause from the audience, while Veronica's face tightened in frustration. Clearly, Clara wasn't falling into the trap set for her. "Very good," Veronica said, trying to mask her annoyance. "But this is only the beginning. I have more questions to challenge you." Alexander stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying a note of warning. "Veronica, I think we should stop here. Clara has proven her capabilities. It wouldn't be fair to continue asking questions designed to undermine her." "Mr. Alexander," Veronica turned to him, her voice smooth but barbed. "This is my party, and I believe the guests here are enjoying the show. If she can't handle the pressure, she's welcome to stop at any time." Clara stood tall, looking directly at Veronica. "Madam, I'm fine. If you have more questions, I'm ready to answer them." Clara's words drew even more attention from the crowd. Some began whispering to one another, discussing not just her intelligence but also her courage in standing up to someone as powerful as Veronica. Mary whispered to herself, her gaze filled with worry, "Clara, don't push yourself too hard." Veronica smiled again, though her smile couldn't hide the scheming in her eyes. She turned to another guest, an older woman with an air of elegance. "Sophia, do you have an interesting question for Clara?" Sophia Munoz, a veteran diplomat, stepped forward with a composed demeanor. "If you're ready, Clara, I have a geography question. Can you tell me which country has the longest coastline in the world?" Clara was momentarily surprised by the sudden shift in topic but quickly regained her focus. "Madam, the country with the longest coastline in the world is Canada." Sophia nodded approvingly. "Very good, Clara. That is correct." A few claps echoed again, but the tension in the room remained palpable. Veronica, though trying to maintain a composed demeanor, could not hide her irritation as Clara repeatedly overcame each challenge. "Very impressive," Veronica said evenly. "But I think this game needs a bit more spice." She stepped forward, her eyes burning with determination. This time, Veronica wasn't merely looking to challenge Clara. She wanted to humiliate her in front of the entire crowd. Turning to face Clara, Veronica's gaze was as sharp as a blade, and her expression no longer carried the initial amusement but rather a firm resolve to crush the young woman. The room, already tense, now felt almost frozen. The guests fell silent, all eyes focused on the two women, one a symbol of power and arrogance, the other a beacon of resilience and intellect. "Clara," Veronica began, her voice soft but laced with menace, "I think you've demonstrated your intelligence well with the previous questions. But intelligence isn't always enough. A person must understand their place in society." Clara met Veronica's gaze head-on, refusing to look away. "Madam, I believe that a person's worth is not defined by their origins but by how they rise to challenges and prove their abilities." Clara's response earned a few nods from the crowd. Some guests whispered among themselves, their discomfort with Veronica's treatment of the young waitress becoming more apparent. But Veronica paid no mind to the murmurs or the glances. She was determined to escalate her game. "So, you truly think you understand everything?" Veronica asked, her lips curling into a smirk. "Then let me ask you one final question. If you answer correctly, I will publicly commend you in front of everyone here. But if you fail, remember your place and return to the work that suits you." A murmur spread through the room, heightening the tension. Alexander frowned, ready to intervene, but Clara spoke first. "Madam, I am ready to answer," Clara said, her voice calm yet resolute. Veronica turned back to the whiteboard and wrote down a series of complex mathematical symbols. This time, the problem was not just difficult but deliberately vague. Clara studied it intently, analyzing every detail. Meanwhile, Veronica stepped aside, crossing her arms and watching with eyes full of expectation. "This is an optimization problem based on incomplete data," Veronica explained. "You'll need to find the best possible solution. I'll give you 5 minutes." Mary, standing from afar, could no longer hold back. She approached Clara and whispered, "Clara, you don't have to do this. Don't let them bully you. I'm sure Alexander will support you if you refuse." Clara turned to Mary, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Mary, I can't back down. This isn't just about me, it's about all the people like me who are looked down upon. I'll do it." Alexander, unable to restrain himself any longer, stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "Veronica, I think this has gone too far. Clara has more than proven herself. There's no need to continue challenging her like this." Veronica turned to Alexander, her voice dripping with challenge. "Alexander, if you wish to leave, you're welcome to do so. But this is my party, and I decide how it proceeds." Clara took a deep breath and focused on the problem. She knew time was limited and that Veronica was intentionally applying pressure to rattle her. But Clara refused to be defeated. She began writing down her steps, her explanations clear and methodical for the audience to follow. As she worked, a few guests, including Louis and Sophia, moved closer to observe. Louis whispered to Sophia, "This young woman is remarkable. I doubt many master's students in economics could solve this problem in such a short time." Sophia nodded. "Indeed. But Veronica isn't testing her intelligence, she's trying to humiliate her." Time ticked away. The room was so silent that the sound of Clara's pen moving across the board was clearly audible. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her eyes shone with unwavering focus and determination. She knew this was her chance to prove herself and protect her dignity. Finally, Clara set down the pen and turned to face the crowd. "Madam, this is my solution." Veronica approached the board, scrutinizing every detail. A few other guests, including Louis, stepped closer to examine the work. After a moment of silence, Louis turned back to the crowd with a smile. "She's correct. A very intelligent and creative solution." The room erupted into applause, louder and more enthusiastic than before. Alexander smiled in satisfaction, while Mary exhaled a sigh of relief. But Veronica was far from pleased. Her smile had vanished, replaced by a visible scowl. "Very well," Veronica said, her tone icy. "You are indeed very clever, Clara. But I hope you don't misunderstand. Your intelligence does not change the fact that you're still just a waitress." The remark left the room in stunned silence. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances, uncomfortable with Veronica's harsh words. Alexander frowned, ready to object, but Clara spoke first. "Madam, I have never believed that my intelligence would immediately change my social standing. But I do believe it can open doors to a better future," Clara said, her voice clear and resolute. Veronica's lips curled into a smirk, her eyes flashing with challenge. "We'll see what kind of future that will be, Clara." The room remained heavy with silence, and everyone could sense that Veronica had no intention of stopping. The atmosphere became stifling as Veronica stepped onto the central platform. She stood tall, her commanding presence filling the space as though she were accustomed to ruling over any room she entered. Guests began whispering among themselves, some visibly uncomfortable with Veronica's behavior, though no one dared to voice their opinions openly. Clara remained standing, her gaze unwavering despite Veronica's piercing, knife-like stare. "Ladies and gentlemen," Veronica began, her voice ringing with authority, "I believe Clara has done quite well tonight, but I would like to pose one final challenge. This will be the ultimate question, one that tests not only intelligence but also understanding and life experience." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Alexander stepped forward, his voice firm. "Veronica, I think Clara has proven enough. This is no longer an intellectual exercise, it's becoming a public humiliation." Veronica turned to Alexander with a falsely sweet smile. "Alexander, if this makes you uncomfortable, you're free to leave. But I believe everyone here is enjoying the evening's entertainment." Alexander opened his mouth to protest, but Clara spoke up first. "Mr. Alexander, thank you for your support. But I believe I can answer one more question." Clara's words made Alexander look at her with deep concern, but he said nothing further. Meanwhile, Mary stood in the corner, barely daring to breathe. "Clara, you really don't have to do this," she whispered to herself. Veronica stepped forward, her gaze sharp and challenging. "Very well. This will be the final question of the evening. Clara, if you answer correctly, I will publicly acknowledge your intelligence in front of everyone here. But if you fail, I hope you'll learn to understand your place." The room fell silent. Veronica gestured to a server, who brought out a small, ornate wooden box. She opened the lid and took out a vintage gold pocket watch. The watch sparkled under the chandelier light, instantly becoming the center of attention. "This is a watch I inherited from my father, a family heirloom of the Delacourts," Veronica said, her voice dripping with pride. "My question is, who crafted this watch, and in what year was it made?" The question caused a ripple of murmurs throughout the room. Some even chuckled, clearly thinking this was an impossible question. "How could a young girl like Clara possibly know that?" someone whispered. Clara furrowed her brows, momentarily taken aback by the odd question. It wasn't a typical challenge but an obvious attempt to throw her off balance. However, instead of panicking, she focused on the details before her. The watch was intricately engraved, and she noticed a small emblem, a tiny triangular logo in the corner of the watch face. "Madam," Clara began, her voice calm and steady, "this watch was crafted by the renowned watchmaker Abelard Fournier. If I'm not mistaken, it was made around 1865. The triangular logo is a signature mark of his work." Veronica froze, her eyes flickering with surprise, though she quickly masked it with a faint, forced smile. "Impressive," she said, her tone attempting to remain natural. "You do seem to know quite a bit." The room erupted in applause, louder and more enthusiastic than before. Several guests turned to one another, exchanging words of admiration for Clara. Alexander smiled with satisfaction, while Mary couldn't hide her emotions, visibly moved. In stark contrast, Veronica stood still, her smile completely gone. "Madam, I thank you for the challenges you've presented tonight," Clara said, her tone gentle but pointed. "They've not only taught me more but have also reaffirmed my sense of self-worth." Clara's words struck a blow to Veronica's pride. She didn't respond, merely turned and walked away, leaving Clara standing in the middle of the room, basking in the support of so many. An elderly guest, Mr. Paul Herrera, approached and shook Clara's hand. "Young lady, you are truly remarkable. I greatly admire your spirit and intellect." Clara bowed her head slightly in gratitude. "Sir, I'm simply doing my best." Alexander also stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Clara's shoulder. "You did an excellent job. I hope this won't be the last time we meet. If you ever need any help, don't hesitate to reach out to me." Clara felt a warmth in her heart. Despite the evening's challenges, she had persevered, not only protecting her dignity but proving that intelligence and determination could triumph over adversity. From a distance, Veronica's eyes burned with anger and calculation as she observed Clara. It was clear that this battle was not over, and she would not easily accept defeat. Clara, though receiving widespread praise, could sense that the real challenge was yet to come. The magnificent room suddenly felt divided into two worlds. On one side stood Clara, upright and resolute, glowing in the admiring gazes of the crowd. On the other was Veronica, standing in a corner with a hardened expression, her defeat evident in every gesture. Yet, even as the attention seemed to shift to Clara, she couldn't ignore the tension that still lingered. Alexander, the esteemed guest, approached Clara once more. His warm smile eased the stifling atmosphere. He spoke gently, "Clara, you've truly surprised me and given me hope. The world needs young people like you, strong, intelligent, and full of self-respect." "Thank you, Mr. Alexander," Clara replied, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "I simply tried my best not to lose my sense of dignity." Alexander nodded, but before he could say more, another guest approached. It was Sofia Munoz, the older diplomat who had posed the geography question earlier. "Clara," she said in a warm, steady voice, "I admire not only your intellect but also your poise and resilience in the face of adversity. I believe you have a bright future ahead of you." Clara smiled in thanks but couldn't shake the feeling of Veronica's cold gaze from across the room. Clara knew that while this confrontation had paused, it was far from over. However, she refused to let fear dominate her. Instead, she focused on the genuine encouragement and support surrounding her. Veronica, at that moment, decided to leave the party. But before exiting, she delivered a parting remark full of veiled menace. "I hope you enjoy this moment, Clara. But don't forget, the world isn't as simple as a battle of wits. Good luck." Veronica's words left some of the crowd silent, but Alexander quickly spoke up, breaking the heavy atmosphere. "Don't let those words trouble you, Clara. What you've shown tonight is not just a small victory but the start of something much greater." Shortly after, another man approached Clara. He introduced himself as Paul Herrera, a renowned businessman in the field of education. "Clara, I've been observing you all evening. You're not only intelligent but also incredibly brave. I run a scholarship fund for exceptional students facing financial difficulties. If you're interested, I would love to support you." Clara was stunned by the unexpected offer. Warmth spread through her heart. "Mr. Herrera, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for your generosity." Paul smiled, his voice sincere. "Clara, this isn't charity. It's recognition. People like you deserve the chance to go further." The room buzzed with positive conversations. Many guests approached Clara to shake her hand and offer words of encouragement, while others quietly criticized Veronica's arrogance. Mary, who had been silently supporting Clara all night, couldn't hold back her tears. She stepped forward and took Clara's hand. "You've truly done it. I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, Mary," Clara replied warmly. "But without you, I wouldn't have been strong enough. Your advice has always been my greatest motivation." Alexander, still standing nearby, said, "Clara, I have a proposal for you. If you're interested, I would like to invite you to join a special project I'm leading. It's a leadership training program for talented students, and I believe you would be a perfect fit." His words took both Clara and Mary by surprise. Clara, though feeling honored, maintained her humility. "Sir, I truly appreciate the invitation. I need a little time to think it over, but I am very interested." Alexander nodded. "Of course, take your time. But I believe you have the potential to achieve great things." That evening, as the party concluded, Clara left Veronica's mansion feeling a sense of relief. Despite facing challenging trials, she had overcome them with intellect and determination. The encouragement and new opportunities she received made her realize her efforts had not been in vain. Above all, what warmed Clara's heart the most was the support from people like Mary, Alexander, and Paul. They not only recognized her true worth but also offered her a chance to change her future. Clara knew this was only the beginning, and though the road ahead would be difficult, she was ready to face whatever came her way. From a second-story window of the mansion, Veronica watched Clara leave. Her gaze was not only filled with anger but also with a mix of curiosity and confusion. Perhaps, deep down, she had to admit that Clara was no ordinary girl. But Veronica would not let things end so easily. Unaware of Veronica's watchful eyes, Clara stepped out of the grand gates, feeling the cool night breeze on her face. The starry sky above seemed to bless the young woman who had proven that intelligence and self-respect could change a life. The next morning, Clara woke up in her small rented room. The silence was broken by the ringing of her phone. She glanced at the screen, surprised to see an unfamiliar number. After a moment of hesitation, she answered. "Is this Clara?" Alexander's calm, steady voice came through. "I hope I'm not disturbing you too early." "Not at all, Mr. Alexander," Clara replied, trying to keep her tone composed despite a twinge of nervousness. "How can I help you?" "I just wanted to follow up on my invitation from last night," Alexander said. "We're running a leadership development project for promising students, and I believe you're an ideal candidate. I've spoken to the management, and they're willing to offer you a full scholarship if you agree to join." Clara could hardly believe her ears. A full scholarship? A wave of warmth washed over her, though she tried to remain calm. "Sir, I am truly grateful for this opportunity. I'm very interested, but I'd like some time to consider." Alexander chuckled softly over the phone. "Of course, take your time. But I want you to know that we're very eager to work with you." After thanking Alexander once more, Clara ended the call. She sat down by her window, gazing outside. A sense of relief and hope filled her, but she also knew that this decision wouldn't be an easy one. Later that day, Mary, her close colleague, stopped by after her shift. When Clara shared Alexander's invitation, Mary nearly jumped with excitement. "Clara, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You absolutely have to take it," Mary exclaimed, her eyes shining. Not everyone gets noticed and offered a chance like this from someone like Alexander. "I know, Mary," Clara replied thoughtfully. "But I'm still worried. If I join the project, I'll have to leave my current job. I'm not sure if I'll be able to maintain stability." Mary took Clara's hand, her voice firm and encouraging. "Clara, you've worked tirelessly to chase your dreams. This is your chance to get closer to your goals. Don't let fear hold you back." Clara smiled, feeling the weight on her shoulders lighten. But before she could respond, the doorbell rang. She opened it to find Paul Herrera, the older businessman who had approached her at the party. "Clara, I apologize for showing up unannounced," Paul said with a kind smile. "I just wanted to discuss our scholarship program further." Clara invited him in, and the three of them, Clara, Paul, and Mary, sat down to talk. Paul explained that his scholarship program not only provided financial support but also offered internships and job opportunities with major corporations. He emphasized that Clara would be able to study without worrying about living expenses. "Clara," Paul said sincerely, "I know you're facing a big decision, but I want you to understand that we believe in your potential. This isn't just an opportunity, it's the first step toward building a better future." Mary added, "Clara, do you see? Everyone recognizes your worth. This is the moment for you to believe in yourself." Clara remained silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the teacup in front of her. Paul and Mary's words ignited a newfound confidence within her. She knew this decision would not only shape her own future but also affirm that her efforts had not been in vain. "Mr. Herrera, thank you for believing in me," Clara finally said, her voice clear and resolute. "I will accept the scholarship and join this program. I'll do my best to live up to your expectations." Paul smiled warmly, his eyes reflecting satisfaction. "Excellent, Clara. I'm confident you won't disappoint us. I'll make all the necessary arrangements, and you can begin whenever you're ready." As Paul left, Mary couldn't hide her joy. "Clara, you made the right choice. I'm so proud of you." Clara smiled, feeling a profound happiness deep within. Yet she also knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. She would face new challenges, but with the support of people like Alexander, Paul, and Mary, she believed she could overcome anything. That evening, Clara sat at her desk, looking over a list of materials she needed to prepare for the program. Her heart brimmed with hope and determination. This wasn't just a turning point in her life, it was an opportunity to prove that a girl from humble beginnings could achieve extraordinary things. Far away, in the darkness of the mansion, Veronica sat in her study, her cold eyes fixed on the gold pocket watch. She hadn't forgotten what had transpired at the party. Clara, with her intelligence and confidence, had become a true challenge to her. Veronica smirked, as though reminding herself that this story was far from over. On her first day in Alexander's leadership training program, Clara felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. She was welcomed into a modern building in the heart of the city, where classes and workshops were held. The atmosphere buzzed with positive energy as students from diverse backgrounds arrived, bringing with them determination and enthusiasm. Alexander personally stood at the entrance to greet Clara. "Welcome, Clara. I know you'll do well. Consider this the first step in transforming your life." Clara bowed her head gratefully. "Thank you, sir. I will give it my all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity." Alexander smiled and gestured toward the main conference room. "We're about to begin. Please go inside and get to know your new companions." Clara stepped into the room, where about 20 other students were chatting. Some seemed confident, while others appeared just as nervous as she felt. Almost immediately, a girl with curly hair and bright eyes approached her. "Hi. I'm Natalia," the girl introduced herself with a cheerful smile. "Are you new to this program too?" Clara nodded, feeling a bit more at ease with Natalia's friendliness. "Yes, I'm Clara. This is my first day." "That's great." "Mine too," Natalia replied. "Let's do our best together. I've heard this program is really demanding, but also incredibly rewarding." Before Clara could respond, a voice rang out from the front of the room. It was an older man with an authoritative but approachable demeanor. He introduced himself as Ignatius, the program director, and began the opening session. "Everyone," Ignatius said, his voice warm yet firm, "this program is not just about developing leadership skills. It's about helping you understand yourselves, the value of collaboration, and the power of perseverance. We're not only looking for the most talented individuals but also for those with compassion and an unwavering drive to improve." Clara could feel the sincerity in Ignatius' words, which bolstered her determination. During the session, Ignatius introduced the projects each student would participate in. They would be divided into small groups to tackle real-world problems related to economics, society, and the environment. "Clara," Ignatius said, calling her name as his gaze rested on her with a gentle smile. "I've read your profile. I'm very impressed by your dedication and your story. I believe you will be one of the key contributors to this program." Clara felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She gave a small nod of thanks, but she couldn't hide her emotion. For the first time, aside from people like Mary, someone was publicly acknowledging her efforts in such a meaningful way. After the session, Clara was assigned to a group of 5 people, including Natalia and a tall, serious-looking young man named Xavier. Their project focused on researching the impact of digital education on underprivileged communities. The moment they received their assignment, the group dove into a lively discussion. "We need to identify the biggest barriers to digital education in disadvantaged areas," Xavier said, his tone decisive but thoughtful. "But first, we should pinpoint reliable sources of information." Natalia quickly chimed in. "That's true, but I think we should also study successful educational models in similar areas. We might find solutions there." Clara listened carefully and took notes before speaking up gently, I agree with both of you. But besides studying models and sources, we should also interview people who actually live and learn in these conditions. I think that would provide us with a more practical perspective. Clara's suggestion made everyone nod in agreement. Even Xavier, known for his critical nature, cracked a rare smile. I like this practical approach. Let's create a detailed plan for each step. In the days that followed, Clara immersed herself in the group's work. Despite the challenges, she found herself learning a great deal from her teammates, particularly Xavier and Natalia. The diversity of ideas and approaches helped the group make rapid progress. One day, while the group was working in a conference room, Alexander unexpectedly walked in. He observed the data charts and graphs on the table, then turned to Clara. "You're doing very well, Clara," Alexander said with a proud smile. "I knew you wouldn't disappoint me." Clara bowed her head slightly, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, sir. But this isn't just my effort. Our group has been working very hard together." Alexander nodded, his eyes reflecting his satisfaction. "That's right, success is always the result of collaboration. I hope you continue to nurture that." After Alexander left, Natalia turned to Clara, her eyes shining. "Clara, I think you've made Alexander very proud. You're a natural leader." Clara smiled but said nothing. Deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. But with the opportunities she now had, along with the support of people like Alexander, Natalia, and Xavier, she believed she could go much further. Far away, in the grand mansion of Veronica, she sat in her study, her expression still full of calculation. Clara was no longer just an anonymous waitress. She had become someone Veronica needed to keep an eye on, no matter how much that irritated her. "We will meet again, Clara," Veronica murmured, a cold smile forming on her lips. Clara's story highlights the value of intellect, perseverance, and self-confidence. Despite her humble beginnings, she proved that nothing is impossible if one has the determination to overcome challenges and uphold their dignity. The support of those around her, like Alexander and Paul, underscores the importance of giving opportunities to those with potential. Ultimately, this story is a testament to the transformative power of effort and courage, showing that life's obstacles and prejudices can be conquered through resilience and belief in oneself.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.